Good morning. Welcome to Maunalua, Past, Present, and Future. My name is Kaleo Paik, and today we have with us as our guest Mr. Brad Cooper, a pahu maker. And today's topic, I should say, or the title of today's show is The Journey of Kanialaʻa. We have a drum here, and that is Kanialaʻa. And Brad will be talking about that. But first, let's talk about where Kanialaʻa came from. It came from Havea, and Havea is located on the east side of Oahu. As you can see by that green star, that's where it all started. Livable Hawaii Kai Hui was able to purchase a piece of property where the coconut grove was located, of which this drum came from the tree called koko. And we always believe that our past, present, and future involve our children and the generations to come. So one of the most interesting things is we are constantly working on our land, hoping to preserve and protect it. We've cleared a lot of it away, of the invasives, and now we're planting our native plants in. But our concentration today is on Kanialaʻa, a magnificent drum and a very, very special gift. And what I'd like to do is introduce Brad Cooper. And could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Brad?
Sure. My name is Brad Cooper, and until this past June, I was a school teacher at Kamehameha Schools, middle school. I've been teaching there for 43 years. And along the way, I also became a member of Halau Nakamale Ōlelo Lehua, our Kumuhula, Robert Casimiro. And I think at that time, I really started to develop my passion for the pahu. And so it became a passion. It became a hobby. It was not something to intentionally be made for commercial purposes, but rather for just the significance and being able to be a part of that cultural kind of piece. Yeah.
Oh, so wonderful. And all journeys start at the beginning of something, somewhere. Can you let the audience out there know just how this journey actually started?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting how everything kind of fell, in place. We had been at the Merry Monarch as a halau, and we were on our way home. We had to fly out of Kona because, of course, during Merry Monarch time, all the flights are booked. And while we were waiting for the plane, you came up to me and,
yes,
and
I
introduced
did.
yourself. And we had a little connection prior, way back in the 70s at UH, part of the music department.
Yes.
I was actually a zoology major, but I also had a passion of singing, and I was a member of the University Singers, and Robert was another tenor that became a good friend. And so with that little knowledge, and I don't know how exactly you knew about my making of drums, but you came up to me and you told me about koko. And it was kind of a little sad story because the top had blown off.
Yes.
And of course, you were asking if I would come take a look at the tree and give some advice as to what might have to be done. And that's how it all started.
Yes, and to give you a little bit background as far as the viewers are concerned, Koko, as we named her lovingly, was named the tallest niu in all of the state of Hawaii. And the state of Hawaii, the DLNR, actually nominated her to be in the national contest. And the national contest was to see the favorite tree in the whole nation. And Koko, as you can see in this picture, is the tallest niu in the grove. Well, in November or December of 2014, a high wind came through Hawaii Kai and blew off her top. and knowing that once the top goes, the rest of the tree will soon follow. It will start to rot. So seeing you at the airport, I was desperate to find somebody who could evaluate the tree, give us let us know if it was good enough to make a pahu. So with that in mind, I'd like to, we actually, in maybe about a week or so, we were able to get the construction people from next door to come over and tell us your experience about that day when we came over.
Yeah, that was actually kind of special because being the size that it was, and also, you know, it is in an archaeological site. So, of course, it was very close to the old well.
Yes.
And I knew that there might be just some problems if that tree were to just be brought and felled. Okay, just let it go. So it was interesting, though, because you had mentioned that they were going to be coming from the construction site next door. And I think the area that we were in was actually partially saved from that construction. And yet here they are coming to help. And they did bring over 2 forklifts and sort of cradled the tree. And when we actually cut it, then it was able to actually lower it down very, very slowly to place it exactly where we wanted it. And that was probably also kind of a saving grace for the tree because it probably would have snapped into pieces.
Yes,
with
because
just
it
the
was
force
such a
of it.
tall tree.
It was, yeah, a very large tree. I mean, 112 feet tall, I think, originally.
Yes.
And yeah, very impressive.
Yeah, and there's you know, as you can see in the picture, that's you cutting segments off of that tree, and the lowest portion then became Kanialaʻa.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I took the initial cut because, again, traditionally you would take, to try to get the girth, you want to get a nice diameter on the drum. And so the first section, as you can see, yeah, this became Kanialaʻa.
Yeah. Now, there's a much larger story of Kanialaʻa dating back to the first drum. Could you just give us a little history about Hawea?
Well, actually, supposedly, even if we go back to the beginning of the pahu in Hawaii, the story is that originally it came, the first pahu came to Hawaii as a gift. And there is a story, a legend about Moʻikeha, who was a navigator, and he was, of course, an ali'i. And he had traveled to Tahiti. There are actually 2 versions of the story, but in one it says that he traveled to Tahiti on a voyage and was there for quite a while and decided it might be a nice second home, and actually had a family in Tahiti. Years later, it talks about him returning back to Hawaii and going to Kauai to reside on the island of Kauai. Later on, he had a son, of course, with his family from Hawaii, and his name was Kila. And he too became a navigator and interested in voyaging. And he had heard about the Tahitian part of the family and had a half-brother, and his name was La'amai Kahiki. And so in the story, it talks about Kila traveling to Tahiti to find his half-brother. And then they did arrange for him to come back. And it was on that return trip that La'amai Kahiki supposedly brought the first pahu, named Hawea, back to Hawaii, and actually to be given as a gift to Moʻikeha. We do know that it became, of course, very sacred. The making of the pahu is a sacred act anyways. But it did end up residing in a number of heiau. And I think tradition-wise, when you see that there are a number of Hawea heiaus, it probably because it resided at those from time to time. We do know that it actually is mentioned that it did reside also at Kukaniloko, okay, on the island of Oahu, right in the piko, the middle of the island.
Right, yes. And it was drummed for the birth of Kakuʻiheva, who was the mo'i from this island of Oahu. So there's a huge connection between Kanialaʻa being the gift to the Livable Hawaii Kai Hui from an ancient past of Havea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the connection is that the drums have come back to Havea, which is a circle, shall
Right.
we say, of
Right.
events. Now, to continue on to the journey, can you give us your view of your journey with Kanialaʻa from the time that we cut the tree down, we had it in your truck,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You took it away, and you started working on the drum.
Yeah, it actually it sat for a while.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've found over the years as I make drums, you really have to go with inspiration. You know, you cannot, at least I cannot, say today I'm going to work on the drum and I'm going to create a new pahu. I can't force myself to work on something because it never will come out
Correct.
very well. And so waiting for the inspiration, and you know, I didn't want to rush into it at the same time because I wanted to, it was such a special tree to begin with. It was such a special circumstance in that it is found at a heiau called Havea. The first pahu that comes to Hawaii is Havea. All of those connections, this was going to be something that was very special. And I didn't want to just rush into it and force myself to do the work on it. So it sat for a while, and I kind of tossed around pattern ideas and things, and things were not really coming very clear on it at first. And then it just kind of dawned all of a sudden one day, and it was like, it has to do with the gifting of Havea originally to Mo'ikeha, and it has to have to do with La'amaikahiki. And immediately I thought of the voyaging. And so in the pattern, what I tried to do is to incorporate that shape of the holes of the canoe. And so that there would be this connection with that wonderful past, that wonderful tradition, and the creating of this new piece.
And it's a wonderful piece. And to continue on to the journey, when you finally finished, and you had called to inform us that the drum is ready, we said, okay, well, we need to have a gifting. It will have to be at Havea. And just as chance would have it, we cut the tree in, I believe it was May 15th, 2015. We cut cocoa 2015, in May 15th, on May 15th. On May 15th of 2016, the drum, Kanialaʻa, came to Havea. From your perspective, tell us that journey on that day.
Well, first of all, we didn't really have a set program.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of anxiety there because I didn't know what exactly to expect. My wife and I, though, kind of knew that we were going to do something. Well, we did also talk with Momi Akana.
Yes.
And she was a teacher with me at Kamehameha Schools, and she, in fact, she was teaching 7th grade, I was teaching 7th grade Hawaiian Studies, and so we shared a lot, and she came one day and said, I have written a chant about Kanialaʻa. And it was kind of out of the blue, it was kind of like a surprise. And so immediately we knew that had to be part of the gifting, that we would actually present not only Kanialaʻa, but we would also play it and use it for the chant.
Yes.
And so that became kind of what our end of the program was. So my wife, of course, joined me. She is uniki'd from Auntie Mae Klein. And of course, I graduated from Robert and Halau Nakamaleo Lili Lehua. And so then we got with Momi Akana, who basically, she had just recently graduated also from Ed Kalahiki. So the three of us got together and practiced, and that was going to be part of the gifting.
Yes.
And then, of course, arriving there and knowing that, of course, there was no real set program to begin with. That was, but we kind of had an idea of what we had to do. I think for me, the challenge was I put Kanialaʻa on my shoulder and started to walk up the hill to come to the area where it was set for the actual program. And I was chanting, and I was running out of breath because I didn't realize walking up the hill with Kanialaʻa on my shoulder was going to be so taxing.
The interesting part was, if we could see that picture again of the gifting, where Brad took Kanialaʻa on that little uphill was just beside the stump of cocoa.
Right.
So everything was so significant, and everything fell into place as part of this journey. One could say by accident, but I think it was more by a design above ourselves.
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, and
Right.
in this particular picture, you have just given us the gifting of that drum, of Kanialaʻa, and explain to us the adornment on there, because I know it's significant that you had adorned Kanialaʻa for the hui. If you could explain what went into that, what was the reason for it?
Well, the dressing of the pahu, okay, is it's something that should be done. It is a living entity,
Yes.
and so it needs to be dressed also. So whenever we have performances, whenever we have it out in public, and actually even at home, from time to time, you'll adorn the pahu. And so that particular lei that I put together was made of palapalai. And of course, significance there is, of course, it is a kinolau of Laka, goddess of hula. And of course, even though this is a pahu heiau, the pahu heiau were used at certain times at the heiau for certain hula that would be done for the gods. And so there is that connection with all of that, the Laka, goddess of hula, the playing of the pahu, and of course the adorning of it.
Yes, and it was a magnificent event. As we said, it happened 1 year after Coco was cut down, and we like to think that she had her glory and her time was at hand, and she gifted us with a repurpose. So she will live on as Kanialaʻa, just a change of name. And we thought it was very, very significant. I'd also like to say the journey, too, with just the gifting, but it was also the gifting in its purest sense. Because we didn't really commission you to do the drum. It was an act of pure gifting on your behalf. And what inspired you? I'm sure you asked to do pahu for other people, other events, and what made this particular one different that you would be able to just give it so freely to an organization you knew very little about at the time, but...
I think, again, just all of the circumstances and how it all came about, but also the idea of knowing that this was such a magnificent tree.
Yeah.
And, I knew when I first saw that the top was off, and it had to come down because if not, water will get into those trees, and the whole thing would have rotted and would have been falling. So in my past experience, I won't cut a tree to make a pahu. I won't go out and say, okay, I'm going to take down this tree and make a pahu. I kind of wait for the stumps to come. When people do cut, they'll sometimes call. Or I may be driving down the road and I see somebody taking down a tree. Immediately I'll pull over and I'll ask them, are you going to be doing anything with the stump? I'd like to have a piece, But my idea is that I don't want to take a life to make another life.
Yeah.
But if in this case the tree was already dead, had to come down, I'm making a new life for it. You know, I'm giving it again a new life, and its voice will then continue to proclaim what it wants to say. And so that's really what my position is. So in this case, this was truly a magnificent tree to begin with, and to be given that honor actually to be able to work on it and to be able to create something with it. I think there was no question that there was, it wasn't going to be a completely, here is a gift for you. It had to be, because again of just the circumstances.
And we are the recipient of this wonderful, wonderful gift, and I'm speaking of the Livable Hawaii Kai Hui as the stewardship holder. Since Kanialaʻa came to us, it has been housed by our president, Elizabeth Riley, at her home until at such time that the Livable Hawaii Kai Hui has a secure place of their own, that this magnificent gift can be displayed. But we also know that the gift was not just to a specific entity. It was for the East Oahu community, and to have Havea reborn in its original purpose of drumming. And so this has just so many significant...
Right. We don't want it to just be a museum piece. Okay?
Exactly.
Because the making of the pahu has a voice, and it needs to be sounded.
Yes.
So whether it's to bring it out once or twice a year and have a gathering and to actually have it played, I mean, that's really what the pahu is for, is to be played.
And that's a task for the Livable Hawaii Kai Hui to make sure that we do that in the future, that we can also have the voice, the leo, and speak about the name.
Yeah, again, you always name, all your prized possessions because, well, in this case, it's a living entity too. It's a person, and it needs to have a name.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of times names will just come to you, and then there'll be other times where you kind of have to wrestle with them. And in this case, I was wrestling. And because there was so much in this whole thing, I mean, the idea of, again, Havea, and thing of La'amaikahiki, and of all of those kind of ideas that were going around, it's just not, how do you actually get the right name? And it's just, I threw it out to a good friend of mine, and she kind of thought about it a little bit, and she said, well, why don't you just do something very easy? And that's when it popped. And it's the kani, the sound, the resonance of La'a, of La'amaikahiki, the one who brought that traditional first drum. And so that kind of made sense. And then later on you find out that it could also be the resonance of sacredness. See, as a sort of another meaning to it.
Yes.
And I mean, how appropriate for a drum to be made and housed at Havea, a heiau, a place of ancient worship, a place truly very sacred, and to be a part of that. So that's how the name came about.
That is so wonderful. The whole journey of Kanialaʻa it's even bigger than we first imagined or even thought of on that very first day when I saw you at Kona Airport and approached you, and to today where we have this little show to demonstrate and to highlight Kanialaʻa. The journey has been magnificent, to say the least. It has been magical. All of the wonderful words that one could say about such a special gift. And it also speaks to the maker, the person who actually makes the pahu. And to have it with the history of Havea and the ups and downs. We almost lost it. It may have been a parking lot, a swimming pool, and a tennis court, and now it is for the community. And now that we have this magnificent drum. And as our show is coming to a close, I'd like to reach out to the audience that if you want to know more about Havea, about Kanialaʻa, about the activities that go on in Livable Hawaii Kai Hui, please take note of these flyers that are coming out and email us, and we'll definitely be sending you an email and welcome you. We have a second Saturday of each month as a community work day. Come to Havea. Come to see where this drum came from, Kanialaʻa, and just be a part of the community that helped to save Havea, that led to a gift of Kanialaʻa, and also will be for the future, the continuance of time. And if you don't mind, would you be able to share with us the gift of the Kanialaʻa, the sounding of
I would
la'a?
be honored, yes.
Thank you. Mahalo to Brad as being our guest here today, to Livable Hawaii Kai Hui, and mahalo to the Ōlelo station for having us this day. Thank you very much.